morning, everyone. I'm sure you're all excited that we don't have school today. It's our first e-learning day, which means you should be watching this video, obviously, and then you need to make sure that you do the online completion of that e-learning quiz to count for your attendance today. My suggestion is that you still pull out your notes. This video isn't going to be super long, but there are going to be a few things that you'll want to write down and have in your notes that pertains to the information we're going to look at. So today we're going to take a look at graphing inequalities. And if we remember from first trimester, right, our inequalities are things that are less than, greater than, that type of thing. And just like when we graphed inequalities on a number line first trimester, we're going to take that same idea this trimester and we're going to graph with two variables on the coordinate plane. So similar how we had to consider if we wanted to shade to the right or to the left, and if we needed to make an open circle or a filled in circle, we have similar ideas to consider today. So our rules with graphing inequalities on the coordinate plane say that if we have greater than or less than, when we graph, we are now going to use a dashed line. If we have greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, we are going to use a solid line, which is, right, just a line like we've been drawing. If we have greater than or equal to, this is going to tell us to do some shading above. So we're going to shade above. And if we have less than or equal to, we are going to shade below. Also the same idea, very similar to what we saw first trimester, is that these rules only worked if our variable was first. So now that we have two variables, these rules are only going to work if we are solved for y. In other words, we want to be in y equals mx plus b format. The only difference is that this equal sign is now going to be replaced with an inequality sign. Good news is that in terms of graphing, everything else is going to be exactly like it was when we were in y equals mx plus b format. Okay, so let's go through here a couple things we want to take a look at. Oops, not equals. Y is greater than 1/2 x plus 1. Okay, so this is now an inequality. It looks very similar to what we've been seeing, but now we have an inequality symbol. Okay, and we're going to graph this exactly how we have been graphing this. Which means for the moment, let's ignore the fact that this is an inequality symbol at all. Okay, and let's pretend that it's just slope-intercept form, and we want to find m, and we want to find b. So same as before, our slope is going to be 1/2. Our b is going to be 1. So when we go to graph this, we're going to start graphing just like we did with slope-intercept form. We're going to start with our y-intercept being at 1. And then from this point, we are going to consider our slope. So our slope says to go up 1 over 2. Just like we did before, we're going to count twice just to make sure we didn't mess up with our counting. Then before we draw the line in, now we need to consider our inequality symbol. So our inequality symbol, we are now going to look up here at the rules that we have. So a greater than symbol is going to tell us that when we graph this, we need to use a dashed line. Okay, so I am going to use a dashed line. Okay, then I'm also going to look at this. And this says that my inequality symbol greater than tells me to shade above. Right, so here's my line, right? I have stuff happening below it, and I have stuff happening above it. Right, here's below, here's above. I want to shade all of this stuff above. Now, a couple things I want you to think about. No doing a super tiny scribble. No coloring this in so it's so dark it's black. Okay, but just make sure you're giving yourself enough that you're really seeing everything that's above. Just like always, this goes on for forever. But then this, even though it's sort of messy, is our actual final graph. This is what our final graph looks like. This says that anywhere I have shaded space is a possible solution. We're no longer looking at just the line, but everywhere that we have shaded is a possible solution as well. Okay, so let's look at another one. Maybe we have y is less than or equal to negative 2x minus 3. Okay, so same thing. This is already in slope-intercept form, right? Which is what we said we needed it to be in, so that's good. So we'll find our m. Our m is negative 2. We'll find our b. b is negative 3. So on our coordinate plane, we're going to start at negative 3. Okay, then just like normal, we need our slope to be a fraction form. So I need this to be negative 2 over 1. So from this point, I'm going to go down 2, but then remember I'm going right 1 because it's negative 2 over positive 1. Do that again. Okay, again, now I'm going to look at my inequality symbol. I have less than or equal to. Less than or equal to tells me that I want a solid line. So I'm going to make my line just like normal. Okay, pretend I hit some of those points. Okay, but I also need to consider shading. So less than or equal to tells me to shade below. A good way to remember, less than, right, this sort of is the same shape as an L. Less than is lower. Okay, so below, right, here's going to be above. Here's going to be below. So I'm going to shade all of this space below. This graph is going to be my final answer. I'm going to look at 2 more. Almost done with notes. Okay, maybe we have something that says, y is greater than 4. And if we remember our rules, slope-intercept form, this really says y is greater than 0x plus 4, which says m is now going to equal 0, and b is 4. Okay, so on my coordinate plane, I'm going to start at my y-intercept, at my b, which is 4. 0 and a fraction, right? 0 over 1, so I'm going to go up 0 over 1. So this is my horizontal line. It's going to be a dashed line, right? This tells me to use a dashed line. And then greater than tells me to shade above. So I'm going to shade all of this above. Now, what if we're given something in a different form? So maybe if we're given 2x minus 4y is greater than or equal to 8. Obviously, in terms of just getting the line, we could cover up and find the x and y intercept. The problem is that this won't work for using our rules for graphing. So we can't use standard form with inequalities. We have to solve this for y. Okay, so to solve this for y, right, we're going to subtract 2x from each side. So that leaves us with a negative 4y is greater than or equal to a negative 2x plus 8. Then we're going to divide by negative 4, right? We have to make sure we get that negative with it. Now here's where we have to remember from first trimester. When we divide by a negative, we have to flip that inequality sign. So this is going to become y is less than or equal to. 2 negatives make a positive. I'm going to reduce this to a 1/2 x. Positive and a negative make a negative 2. Okay, so my m is 1/2. My b is -2. So this point, as long as we get this solved for y correctly and we get that sign flipped, nothing else is different. I'm going to start at -2. Right, my slope says up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. Less than or equal to the solid line underneath. The or equal to underneath means a solid line when we graph it. So when I graph this gets a solid line. Less than is lower. So I am going to shade below. So you have a few problems posted. The problem with the worksheet I've removed because I needed to change assignments. There was something you could open at home. So you have a couple problems from your textbook to do with graphing. I know you don't have graph paper, but just do the best you can on notebook paper and go from there. That's fine. And then make sure you complete the Canvas quiz because that's what counts for your attendance today. So make sure you complete everything that's in your Canvas calendar. Hope you have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow.